Hey everybody, it is 12 o'clock. My name's Hayden Greene. That must mean you are inside the greenhouse effect, and I'm gonna give myself a little bit of light over here so y'all can actually see me. Hey, how's everybody doing? It's another Thursday, and it's Corona time, but we're gonna make it happen. Welcome to the greenhouse effect. Again, like I said, I'm your host, Hayden Greene, and we got a lot of stuff to talk about today. And I don't know how long today's show is going to be, but we got a couple of issues that we need to talk about. First and foremost, I want to talk about Halloween. Got to talk about Halloween. My wife and I have just been trying to figure some stuff out for Halloween, and so I'm gonna bounce some ideas off of you. You guys are gonna be my sounding board, so make sure you hit me up in the chat and let me know that you're here, hanging out with me, talking with me. I hate talking by myself, but y'all, y'all, y'all get at me. All right. Then we need to talk about voting. Voting has started in the country, and we are in the midst of voting, and so that's fun, but there's a lot of shenanigans going on. And then we got to talk about the Supreme Court nominations, and then we got to talk about sports. We're going to talk a little bit about the militia that tried to kidnap a Michigan governor. Is that what we're doing these days in this country? We're plotting to kidnap elected officials. That's what's happening in America right now. And I'm writing stuff down because I'm like, as I'm talking, I'm like, oh man, I almost forgot. We apparently have to cancel stand-up comedy. Yeah, because I'll get to that in a second, right? And then we got to talk about y'all's leader, and talk about the fact that he is getting on the stage and begging people to like him now. So yeah, it's a crazy week, and we have been trying to hold everything together. I live in New York, as most of you know, and the numbers in New York are going back up, and so now there are certain parts in New York that are being shut down again. And this is the crazy part about it, is that they're doing it by zip codes, right? So it makes sense when you think about it outside of the box, right? But like, so if you are in a particular zip code that is the numbers are going up, your restrictions are one thing, right? So let's say your indoor dining gets taken away, or you no longer can have church services and things along those lines. And this is important for the people who have restaurants in these zip codes, because if you're in the zip code, and everybody know how zip codes work, right? They're arbitrary lines. So if you're inside the zip code and you go across the street, which is on another zip code that is outside of the restrictions, now the restaurant that's across the street now gets to say, well, I can have indoor dining and you can't because I'm in one zip code and you're not in another zip code. And so using the zip code for me is not working. I think that they need to go with their own zones. Like, they can figure out where the hotspots are, where people are getting infected and doing things that are detrimental to the spread of the disease. And use that, because I think with the zip codes, what's happening is people are saying, now when it was the whole city, it was one thing, but like people are saying, it's like, oh well, I can't go to the restaurant here, so I'm just going to go down the street and go to the restaurant down the street that actually is open and I can sit inside. And so the businesses that are inside the zones that have been shut down again are now complaining. It's like, well, we're losing business to people who are down the street from us. Like, the virus doesn't know anything about a zip code, number one. Number two, if the people that you're trying to the people who you're trying to restrict and saying that these are the hot zones and you don't want to have, they're not going to stay inside those zip codes, right? So nobody's saying it's like, all right, well, the infection rate in Flatbush is X, Y, or Z, and therefore we will restrict Flatbush, right? So The people in Flatbush are not being like, oh, I guess I can't leave Flatbush. I'll just stay here in my house and with the restaurants that are closed down in Flatbush and not leave, right? That's not what's happening. So again, when it was citywide, everybody could say, all of the restaurants are closed. I can't go to any restaurants. All of these things, the museums are closed. I can't go to any museums. That was across the country, across the city. Um, and it happened in the tri-state area, so it wasn't one of those things where it's like, well, I'm just going to go to Jersey and go to a restaurant in Jersey. I'm going to go to eat in Jersey or something like that. That's not what happens, right? But when you do it zip code by zip code, and it's particular zip codes, and it's like five, maybe 4 or 5 different hotspot areas, when you do it that way, now what happens is that the restaurateurs and the people who have businesses inside of those zip codes are suffering unnecessarily. And what's going to end up happening is you're going to push the people who actually are not following the rules into the places where the businesses are open. So they're not going to stay in their respective zip codes, and it doesn't lend to containment. The idea is, like we will cut down on businesses and super spreader events and indoor events and stuff like that. Those things were happening both when they were restricted and when you opened up the city a little bit more, right? So I just hope that we can figure out a way to get this under control. I anticipate that we will be shut down again pretty soon. Dunn, what's up, man? I see you in here. I know Dunn is my resident angry person. Dunn is like, if you've ever watched Key and Peele, Dunn is my anger translator. Like, I say the things that you're supposed to say and be presidential and stuff like that. And Dunn is on the chat being like, nah, son, break it down, bust it up, make everybody pay. I love Dunn. I love him. All right. So speaking of busting it up and making everybody pay, since the last time that we've been on, news is broken that there was a militia, and I don't know why we still call them militias. Militias are people who are groups of people who have armed themselves in order to move a cause forward that a nation is bought into. So they're citizen soldiers, right? But you have to have a war in order to have a citizen soldier. And unless you are going to come out and say that we are now in a race war or some other sort of war that has not been declared, we can't call them militias. They're not militias. What they are terrorist groups. And so the terrorist group decided that they didn't like the fact that Michigan had all of these restrictions on whether you could go get a haircut, go to a bowling alley, and all these things. And they got mad about that. I want y'all to listen to what we're saying here. They got mad about the fact that things like bowling alleys and movies were shut down. And they got angry at that. And these are people with guns. These are people with guns and bad attitudes. And they contrived a plot to kidnap and possibly do harm to the elected governor of Michigan. So I feel like I've talked about this, and all of these topics are starting to run together. So I apologize if I'm reiterating myself. When the leader of this country gets up and says to people like the Proud Boys, stand down but stand by, it's not just Proud Boys that hear him, right? It's these terrorist groups that also now stand by and are like, okay, this is our signal. This is the time for us to get out there and do these things, all right? And so we need to first of all stop calling them militias. They're not fighting anybody's war, right? Second of all, these are terrorist groups that need to be identified and taken out. And everybody will, like, the people on the right will say, well, what about Antifa? There was a meme the other day, and it showed a picture of Antifa and all, and because Antifa is supposedly analogous to the Black Lives Matter movement, right? So, like, Antifa are the people who are pushing the Black Lives Matter agenda. if you look at the mugshots from all the people that they picked up for Antifa, looks like the people from the militia. It's the same. It's the same group of people who are interested in deconstructing or destabilizing the government. My wife and I had this argument that Antifa wasn't as bad as the Boogaloos. These Boogaloo boys are anti-cop, and no one is talking about that. No, oh no. You know, it's these guys are seriously the Boogaloo boys are that's a whole thing, right? Because like they they are anti-police, they're anti-government, but they get to be called militia as opposed to what they are terrorist groups, right? BLM talks about defunding the police, which means take money away from the police so the police don't have to do things that are not their job and give that money to the services where the police won't have to run out and do things that are not part of their job description and they get called terrorist groups, right? So anyway, so I think that that's one of the biggest problems that we have, and you know, I'm crossing my fingers that by the end of the year we start to see things sort themselves out. But I'm crossing my fingers, and part of that is voting. I'm not saying that that's going to be the solution to it. Part of that is voting. One of the things about voting that we need to talk about, and I was in a program that my wife hosted through her job yesterday, or listening to a program. And one of the things that they said was that we have to stop talking about the election results are going to be delayed. First of all, we are not going to know who wins this election on the night of the election. So everybody needs to take a step back from that and breathe, because we have gotten into the mode of, oh, okay, on election night, stay up late, find out who won, you know, late into the night, and you know, you either pop the champagne or you go to bed and moan and stuff like that. But that's not going to happen this year. First of all, it didn't happen 4 years ago. I remember going to bed. It was almost like 1 o'clock, and wasn't quite sure whether or not we were going to have a result. And it wasn't until the morning that we found out that Hillary didn't win. Or that Hillary wasn't president. That's two different stories. Also, I remember when Bush was against Al Gore, and we didn't know for quite a couple of weeks because the hanging chads in Florida had to be decided, and that went to the Supreme Court. This is going to be one of those situations where we will not know who is the winner of this election for probably weeks after the election. And I need people to be cognizant of that, because I don't want people to get into a huff. It's like, well, when are we going to know? And like, how come you can't count these ballots? So there's early election happening right now, and there are counties in Texas that are setting records. There were more people that voted in particular counties in Texas than the entire electoral body of like Vermont or something like that, right? And that's already happened in Texas right now. But the other piece about it too is that because of the virus, there is an inordinate amount of mail-in ballots. So all of these ballots have to be counted. And there are thousands upon millions of ballots that have to be counted. And that counting doesn't happen until the day after the election, right? And so the day after the election, they start counting these ballots. Normally, that's the exact same thing that happens in every election. But in normal elections, there are probably a small portion of what the results are. And they know that even if you counted all of these ballots and they all went for one candidate or another, it still wouldn't make a difference as to who won in that particular state or in that electoral district. This is not going to be like that. There are going to be so many ballots that if, for instance, all of them were for one person, it could sway what the decision was, unless each and every single race is a complete landslide for one party or another, right? So you know, I don't anticipate this being a landslide decision for anybody. I think we might know this by late election night, but only if there is a huge blue wave, right? So this is what I'm talking about. So like, if there is a landslide in each one of the electoral districts, and no matter how many ballots are in in the mail-ins, and you count those, and even if you counted them all for one party or another, it wouldn't change the decision. That's how we would know. I don't think that that's what we're going to get, though, Larry. I think that we have to gird our loins and make sure that the electoral process is going to take a lot longer than it normally does. Speaking of voting, we are, as I mentioned, in the middle of a voting season, and already there are shenanigans, right? So we see in Texas, in one part of Texas, there is an entire county that has cast more votes early, right, than any other place, and they're just getting people out to the polls, which is great because the government that we come into needs to be a government that was elected by the majority of voters that are eligible to cast their vote. And I don't mean the majority of the people that cast their vote. I mean, so I think the number is somewhere in the 40s. 40% of the people who are eligible to cast their vote cast their vote, and then the majority of that 40% are the people who decided. If everybody voted, and no country gets 100% unless you're one of those countries that's ruled by a despot and they count your vote whether or not you cast it, right? Nobody has 100%, right? So if everybody got out there and voted, and we had the majority of the people who are eligible to vote voting, then you can safely say and honestly and really confidently say this particular government, this person who wins the election, these people who win senator seats, these people who win local government elections, all were elected by the majority of the people who are eligible to vote. And the majority of those people decided this guy or this woman was supposed to be in that particular position. That's the ideal position, right? But we got to get out there and vote. And somebody on CNN said it's like there's one party who wants more people to vote, and there's one party who wants less people to vote. And that's really the nefarious nature of where we are in party politics right now. In California, electoral needs to go one man, one vote. Yes. So electoral, look, man. We can have a whole session, and maybe we'll do that next week. We'll talk about what the Electoral College is, because a lot of people still are confused about what it is and why it needs to go. But like we can have a whole session on what the Electoral College is, and then what replaces that, right? There are a couple of different ideas as to how you get rid of the Electoral College, but there are even more ideas as to what then replaces the Electoral College, because you can't just get rid of it. You have to have something that replaces it. But so we have some shenanigans going on in Texas. The Texas governor is currently has put out an edict that there is only one drop-off box per county. Sounds okay, right? Well, when you start to think about the fact that some of the counties have 400,000 people in it, right? That means that if I have to drop off my vote, I have to go to the size of Vermont. And so Vermont has, I think, 46 counties, and it's smaller than this one particular county. They always use this one particular county to say that. This one particular county has 400,000 people, right? Or 500,000 people, and they have one vote. They have one box. Whereas this particular town, the whole of Vermont has 46 counties, and they have therefore 46 boxes, and they have less population than this one particular county in Texas. It might be it might be more than 500,000, because I want to believe that Vermont has more than 500,000 people in there. By the way, have I told you guys what my idea for the state of New England is? All right, follow me on this one. Don't tell anybody I said this. As a matter of fact, actually do tell people. Just don't tell the people in New England, right? I particularly think that the people in New England need to make one state. Follow me on this front. Why does New Hampshire, Vermont, Maine, Connecticut, all of those people, why do all of those people, like those little itty bitty states that like nobody ever heard of, or people have heard of them, but nobody ever goes to, and they've got like 7 people. Why do they get 2 senators, right? Smush all of those people together, right? Make all of those states up there into one state, anchor it by Connecticut or Massachusetts, which would, flip a coin, pick whichever one of those, and make all of them one state. Give them each one senator. Give them some, or maybe give them an extra senator. Because yeah, y'all are one big state up there, and just call that a day. Why does Vermont have 2 senators? Why does Maine have two? What's in Maine? Anyway, and why are there 2 Dakotas? Right. Smush the 2 Dakotas together, give them 2 senators, and call it a day. They're like more. What's the thing in Dakota? There are more cattle in Dakota than there are actual humans. Come on now. Um, I'm with SETI. Smush the Dakotas together. Smush all the New England states together. Make it a state of New England. That way, the Patriots' name actually makes sense. Or just call them the Boston Patriots and just call it a day. And I think we need to rejigger the map a little bit, because there are a lot of people who have, and if you look at, so I have a 11-year-old, and a lot of the educational information, a 7 and 11-year-old, and a lot of the educational information kind of like illuminates stuff that I didn't really pay attention to. But like if you're from the Dakota, your vote is more, it's more valuable than my vote, because I'm in a city with 8 million people. It's just a city and 8 million people. I don't even know what New York State's population is, right? But like a vote in New York is almost diluted because there's so many people here, and it counts for the same electoral college or something like that. And then you go to like Wisconsin, or you go to the Dakotas, and they have similar amount of electoral votes and senators, and get to vote for, and their votes mean more. All right, let's see what we got here. So Michelle said, "What's in Maine? The freshest air you've ever breathed." Great. Let them bottle the air and send it to us. Holly says, "Anti-government nationalist movement started gaining traction with the Reagan administration and has really gained traction with the advent of social media. It's like a perfect storm of misinformation connection through social media changing." No, absolutely. Caitlin says, "My husband jokes about North Dakota doesn't actually exist. It's just a place that they say they're from, if they're in witness to protection." And that's funny because North Dakota and South Dakota are one of those places that are probably very, very beautiful when it comes to actual land and stuff like that. But what exactly is out there, right? I also think that we have a population problem. Like everybody wants to live in the big cities, and there are people who talk about the fact that city-centric population is good for the environment because you don't have to drive. The more people live in suburbs, the more you have to drive to work, you just drive to schools and all the rest of that stuff. But we have an overcrowding problem. So if we have an overcrowding problem, how come we are not like putting out some infrastructure in places in North Dakota, right? Like it doesn't make any sense. I think we have an embarrassment of wealth, and we have an embarrassment of land, and we don't use it properly. Anyway, I was talking about Texas and their one box for one county, and again, it's a way. This is a form of voter suppression. So when we start talking about the Supreme Court, the Supreme Court decision a couple of years ago, about a decade ago, that removed all of the responsibilities of the federal government from regulating when states were going to change what they were doing, what they were going to do around voting. When that got taken away, states went willy nilly. So a governor like the one in Texas could say, "Well, you know what I'm going to do? I'm just going to have one drop off box for each county, regardless of how big these counties are." Texas has 100 and something counties. Some of them are massive. Some of them have 10,000 people in them, right? And so, yes, if you have 10,000 people, one drop-off box makes sense. But if you have a county that is the size of a state, then having one drop-off box is a form of voter suppression. Wyoming, Alaska, Hawaii, Idaho, Dakotas among the lowest population. Exactly, right? So again, it comes back around to your votes meaning more in these states as opposed to a place like one of these coastal towns, like like a Dallas or a Miami or L.A. or New York. Yes, so I'm getting to the fake boxes. So and that's the next thing. In California, they're not fake boxes. They are, as described, private drop off boxes for ballots. So the state of California has said you cannot. So the state of California and every other state says that the drop off boxes for your votes have to be official votes. The Republican Party has started putting up their own private drop off boxes for voters, right? And so we are now talking about the Republican Party, I'm putting up these boxes and slapping a label on it that says that's in an official box. And so the first and foremost thing is that it's illegal because you put the word official on it and it is not a state sanctioned drop off box for your ballot. The second thing is that a ballot, somebody can drop off your ballot, can vote for you if you're dropping off the ballot, but both persons have to sign off on the box, on the actual ballot. Somebody dropping that off in this fake box, in this privatized box, is not in compliance with the law in California and in the rest of the country. So you now have these illegal boxes sitting in California, and the state of California has said to the Republican Party out there, stop. Cease and desist. They have issued a cease and desist order. And so you know what the Republican Party response to that was? Take us to court. Take us to court. So now you want to. So I mean, like, can y'all be any more obvious in the efforts to like be subversive? And so when the leader of the Republican Party is sitting up there and talking about voter fraud and how much he wants to get rid of voter fraud and how much he's concerned with voter fraud. And then you have the California branch of your party putting out illegal boxes in California for people to drop their boxes off to. Who's really concerned about voter fraud? Are you? Are you really? So, it leaves it to be said that that's completely disingenuous, right? So, yes, Harris County in Texas is 2.4 million, which is the one I was thinking about. I got caught on the four, like maybe 2,400,000. Anyway, it's 2.4 million, which is larger than Vermont, and Vermont has 46 boxes, and Harris County has one for 2.4 million people. Nikita says a lot of larger counties in Texas are turning blue. That's why he's making all of these changes. So I'm gonna tell you this right now. I think that there is a huge push in Texas to really, led by Beto and a lot of people who are doing the work on the ground to get the vote out and to try to push Texas blue. I'd turn blue myself on the day that I saw Texas turn blue. That would signal to me that there is something going on. There's actually something going on. I'm a bit of a realist on the side of a pessimist, and I've been to Texas. That's all I gotta say. We need to forget that this time around, treat voting like the after club activity. Wrap up and get it done. Like the after club. So, what Cedric is talking about, for those of you who didn't go clubbing, there's something that's called the let out, right? So you would go to the club and you would go party and then the club would shut down at a particular time, and Vaughn is saying that he was going to do absentee ballot, but the shenanigans, he's going to go in person. And that's a lot of people are saying that right now. And New York is one of those early voting states, so you can get out there and vote early, even if you don't have the day off from your job. So it makes it even more easy. A lot of people are saying wrap it up. Like I said, was talking about with the after club activities. So you go to the club, right? The club is closing at 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock in the morning, and you still got party left in you. And so there would always be the let out. The let out is wherever everybody from the club went to go eat. So it was either IHOP or Mickey D's or stuff like that, and it almost became an after party, right? Or if you were going to a college party and the party was done at noon, at midnight or at 1 o'clock, you had to go find someplace else to party. Or if you went to Baruch, the parties ended at 10 o'clock. 10 o'clock. And it was done. And you had to go find someplace else. So there was such a thing called the let out, right? And so people would actually wait for the let out. There were people who didn't go to the club, didn't go to the actual party, and actually just went to the let out. So people, so Seth is talking about we gotta like really think about wrapping up, because the let out also had a lot of bum bum bum, right? And gird your loins and get out there and vote. And just make sure that your votes get counted. I also read somewhere, and a poll worker posted this on Facebook somewhere, talking about that if you get a ballot that's written on by the poll worker, ask for a new ballot, because no ballot should have any kind of handwriting or anything like that outside of where you are marking off who your candidate is. So if you see poll workers doing some shenanigans, ask for a new ballot. You have the right for a new ballot. I plan to be on the poll for an hour before they open. I'm not messing with that early vote shit. Early voting starts in October 24th in New York. Done this back to every black person getting their gun permit. I personally, I've said this here, and I'll say this again: the NRA and all of these gun advocates, we will never get gun reform until black people arm themselves. It's as simple as that. The minute everybody, as a matter of fact, the only time that we got gun reform is when the Black Panther Party decided to arm themselves for self-defense, and all of a sudden there were a whole bunch of gun regulations in order to get a firearm. So it's again, we're talking about nefarious things, and so I seriously hope that we are not at the stage where we have to start thinking about that stuff, but I feel like it's inevitable. So I as much as I don't want to agree with Dunn, he might be right. You might have to get yourself a pistol drawer, a pistol drawer from Lovecraft Country. For those of you who are not watching Lovecraft Country, you are missing out in the best television right now. Period. Right? So whether or not you ascribe to the black experience, or whether or not you understand what you're seeing and have a ton of questions, Lovecraft Country is the best television on the TV right now. Period. And so the last episode that just went by, it talked about the Tulsa Massacre, and we talked about the Tulsa Massacre on these shows before, when we were looking at Watchcraft Country. And for those of you who don't know about the Tulsa Massacre, there was a Greenwood section of Tulsa that was populated by formerly enslaved people, and it was prosperous. Owned banks, owned businesses, and had everything that they needed. They were self-sufficient. The best black surgeon in the country was from the Greenwood section of Tulsa, and there was an altercation, and a group of white people sanctioned by that deputized by the local sheriffs came in and tore down the entire town, shot people, killed people, burned houses down, and then the U.S. military bombed Greenwood. It is the only time in history that the U.S. military has bombed its own citizens. And within a couple of hours, the town of Greenwood was completely destroyed. It was known as Black Wall Street, and that was recreated on Watchmen, and again recreated on in Lovecraft Country. And just watching it was just like really jarring. But if you're not watching Lovecraft Country, you are missing out on the best television. The show has you messed up. A reenactment of Tulsa Massacre had me locking and loading, bringing into roots, giving reason to hate white folks. Well, hate the people who have bias, and I think that we're in a new age where there is there are people who are who understand that that's not the way that we want our country to be built, right? And seeing what used to happen and how that happened to us is completely gut wrenching. And so, yes, it is very easy to go down that road, but like the hope is that we're at a better place in our country where we can come together and all identities are valid and all identities can find a home. But it is not. We have to make sure that our history is told. For there are black people who don't know about Tulsa. There are reenactments every single day in certain parts of the country of the Civil War battles, but nobody ever talks about things like Tulsa. And so seeing Lovecraft Country really recreate that is it just brings all that pain and that hurt back. And then you see these terrorist groups that are existing throughout the country, and it makes you nervous because it feels like Tulsa all over again. And so that's why you have people like Dunn who will like get yourself a gun, and Said who's like legally armed and stuff like that. So it's traumatic. And there are not a lot of easy solutions, but I hope that it doesn't come to that. I personally don't want to live in a country where that's what's happening, where we are in the midst of a race war. But you know, some stuff has to change if that's not going to happen, right? That's some stuff has to change, right? So, so your boy is on stage recently. He was on the stage. I think he was in Michigan. He might have been in Michigan, or he might have been in somewhere else. But they have this video of the president of the United States standing on stage talking about talking about suburban women, please like me. Number 45 got on the stage and said, "Suburban women, can you please like me? I saved your damn neighborhoods." And so I just got through talking about the fact that I hope that we're not in that place. But this is really dog whistle politics, where there is a lot of like messages that are being sent that it's us against them. And there is no us against them. The only us against them are the people who want to keep control of the power and really pull away from. All right, here we go. I have to look at the comments because Dunn is going crazy. Dunn, you gotta. I know you're angry, but some of the solutions are not along the lines with that you're putting down. But anyway, so yes, it was. So there's a lot of dog whistle politics going out there, and I need people to rebuke this stuff, and I need people who are from the right and from the left who look at this stuff and say, like, this is not who we are, and this is not who we have to be, right? So anyway, okay, let's rejigger and come all the way back. After talking about all of that stuff, I have to talk about Halloween. All right, and so let's take a tangent. This is where we take a commercial break, and this is what I need. I need a commercial break. I need a producer. If anybody out there wants to produce this show, the Greenhouse Effect is now looking for a. We're looking for a producer. Trump was dancing to Macho Man. Oh my God, I am so happy I did not see that. Which is really, really funny because if he's dancing to Macho Man, he is so anti-gay, it's not even funny. And so, like, he puts out all of these dog whistles that are, activates his base for people, for the anti-gay movement. And it's so obvious. If he's out there dancing to Macho Man, it is hilarious to me. True story, I did not realize that the Village People was a gay group. Didn't know that. Well, I mean, when I was younger. I mean, I know that now. I'm a fully grown adult. But when I was younger, I grew up in Trinidad. I didn't know what being from the village meant And I didn't realize that the guy dressed up in cowboy chaps and the policeman and all the rest of the stuff were gay icons. I had no idea, and so and I'm almost positive that there are a lot of people who probably still don't know that the Village People were gay men who were gay icons and who were singing to a particular group of people that became very mainstream. And so when you see people doing YMCA and singing Macho Man, who you know are homophobic, it is hilarious to me. The other thing that always makes me happy is when you see very, very like rah rah rah, athletic types at what you call it, at football games and stuff like that, and you can tell that they are also homophobic, and they're up there going, we will rock you," or singing "We Are the Champions." I think it's hilarious because that's a song by Freddie Mercury, who is a gay man and a very, very proud gay man. And so, like, you got this song, and they're singing this song, but they'd never sit down to dinner with the likes of Freddie Mercury, but they are happy to sing his song, and I think that it's great. I love it. Anytime I go to some place where I see somebody with a big, thick neck, and I know that they're probably not. And this is me judging a book by its cover, so I'm guilty. But if I were to take a guess, I would guess that person probably is not sympathetic to the gay cause, to gay people. I think it's hilarious watching them sing "We Will Rock You." So anyway. So he's completely out of touch with pop culture, and Nikita says that she lives for it. I know this makes Nikita's day completely. Nay. So Halloween's coming up, and so we are really trying to figure out what Halloween looks like this year, right? But it kind of almost is like the one holiday that you should be able to celebrate during COVID, because a lot of people wear masks, right? So like it makes sense. I'm gonna go with Sub-Zero, right? So I have the mask over the face and the rest of the costume. It'll be perfect. But that said, kids pick up candy and all the rest of the stuff. So we've been trying to figure out what we're gonna do for Halloween. There are a couple of events that are like outdoor movies that maybe we might take advantage of. My beautiful wife, has had the idea that we should do a pick and treat. So you get dressed up during Halloween, come to our place. We'll take a picture of you, and you get a picture of you dressed up in your Halloween, and you get a little treat, and then you get the digital the digital picture for you to take away. So now you have a family Halloween picture. I like it. So tell me what you think. We're probably gonna do that this year. Nay says she's not taking candy from anybody. And full disclosure, for those of you who don't know, Nay doesn't take candy from anybody anyway. So this Halloween, COVID don't make no difference. First of all, Nay don't really like people, right? So anyway, what are your suggestions for Halloween? Like, we're a dress-up family. We get dressed up every single year, and we'll be doing it this year. We just have to figure out where we're going in our costumes, right? And so don't ask what we're dressing up as. It is a surprise every single year. If you follow me, you'll see what we're dressing up as this year. My wife's idea is great. Yeah, my wife has great ideas. That's why I married her. The best idea that my wife ever had was deciding to marry me. No? Okay. I mean, I thought I had to throw that out there, right? I like husbands in the world. Man, you got to throw that out there every now and again. Anyway, so we're trying to figure this out. If you have any better ideas for Halloween, let us know. But I think we're probably going to go with the pick and treat, and y'all can utilize Greenlight Photography, which is me. And I used to have people who work with me, but guess what? They all got good and started their own companies. So I'm a great teacher. I just can't hold on to an assistant. Anyway, so send me your ideas for Halloween. I'd love to see them. And send me your guesses as to who you think we're going to be this year. Aha! That might be our next competition. Who are the Greens going to be this year? I'll take all of your guesses. I want to end the show today because we're coming up on time. I want to end the show today and with a serious conversation about comedy. So I am of the opinion that we should cancel stand-up comedy for the mainstream. I don't think that we should have comedians doing stand-up comedy for wide audiences to consume. Why am I saying that? Because we have gotten to a point in this country where we can't take a joke, and I'm completely cognizant of the fact that there are a lot of jokes that should not be made. I am completely cognizant of the fact that there are some things that should not be said. I get that. But is everything off limits? Because we are canceling people left and right about comedy, right? I'm getting to the point where it does not make sense for telling these people that you can make a living by telling jokes, and then when they tell jokes about stuff that is based in truth or based in their opinion of the truth, that we then look to cancel them, right? And said that's exactly why I shouldn't stop. I'm clearly not advocating for the end of comedy. I just think that people need to really get a sense of humor. And so the latest thing is the Saturday Night Live opening skit, and people got seriously butthurt about the things that he said. And Bill Barr is a comedian, and he works on his craft, and he was funny. He was funny. And so there were a lot of people who got offended by what he said. And some of his jokes hit and some of them didn't. But they're jokes, right? And so I don't know. There's got to be a line where we can laugh at certain things. It used to be fine to laugh at certain things. I grew up in the age of Red Fox when he wasn't playing Sanford and Son. I grew up in the age of Richard Pryor, and later on, as I got older, Eddie Murphy doing Raw, and oh my God, I've forgotten the other Eddie Murphy stand-up show. Anyway, so I grew up on really hearing some crazy stuff from stand-up comedians that now, if you play them, all of a sudden that would be completely inappropriate, right? I'm a Paul Mooney fan, so you can't be a Paul Mooney fan and not have a sense of humor. You can't have thin skin and listen to Paul Mooney's comedy. And I think that we've moved so far away of being able to laugh with each other that we're always thinking that we're laughing at each other. And that's part of the problem. We have no longer we are now no longer in a place where we are taking it with a grain of salt. Everything is offensive to everybody. And again, I'm going to say it again. I get that there are some inappropriate stuff, but I think that everything now is being lumped in as inappropriate, and comedy is suffering because of it, right? Where we so I think we can have comedy, and people who don't like it can just deal. Yep. Seth says nobody likes the truth. It's only offensive when somebody hits the truth. This is absolutely true. Holly says comedy should make you laugh and think. SNL was spot on, just enough irony. All right. Freddie agrees with Nay. Oh, Delirious. Yes. Could not remember Delirious. Nay says Paul Mooney is awesome. Says I did not realize how much the N-word was frequently used in Sanford and Son. Oh, yeah. And if you listen to Red Fox's stand-up comedy, it's completely different than Fred Sanford. Oh, so really funny story. I lived in Trinidad when I was growing up, and some promoter brought Red Fox to Trinidad to do a performance. And so the only experience that Trinidadians had with Red Fox was his Sanford and Son show. And so everybody was like, "Oh my God, here comes Sanford and Son. He's gonna tell Sanford and Son type jokes, and he's gonna call people you big dummy, and he's gonna do the oh God, I'm coming." That's not what they got. And of course, he almost got kicked out of the country because he did his stand-up routine, and his stand-up routine is dirty. It is completely dirty. So that was, yes, he did get kicked out, as a matter of fact. So it was absolutely hilarious. Speaking of Trinidad and Tobago, for those of you who did not catch the Amazing Race yesterday, Amazing Race went to Trinidad and Tobago as the first stop. Amazing Race is back. It is far and above my favorite reality show. And Amazing Race went to Trinidad, and they did Carnival, although it wasn't really Carnival. For those of you who know, that's not how Carnival looks. That was kind of like a put on kind of thing. Aspects of Carnival, but that wasn't Carnival. Anyway, they went to Tobago. They went to my favorite beach in Tobago, and I just completely felt seen and validated. They did a really good job of representing the culture. So if you have not checked out, Amazing Race's opening, you should go check that out. It is actually a good representation of how it feels to be in Trinidad, especially during Carnival time. But it was really, really good. What am I missing? The thing. Problem with Bill Burr's sketch is that some was too true, and some people turned their guilty outward rage. Oh, turned their guilty into outward rage against the person who was telling it. Listen, man, he looked a woman dead in the eye and said, "That's what you do." So I can imagine how it felt to have that aspect of your identity be put out on full display. So I get it. I completely get it. Anyway, so I think that comedy, stand-up comedy in particular, is the place where we need to. Where that might actually be the canary in the coal mine. That might be the litmus test of how we move forward. When we can get to the point where we can laugh with each other and laugh at the inadequacies of all of our identities, and laugh because like everybody who has an identity knows that there's places where, yeah, that's kind of messed up. And when somebody calls it out, you be like, yeah, that's funny. We do that, right? Whether we're talking about your gender identity or your racial identity or your sexual orientation identity or your religious identity, there are places where you know that there are inadequacies in your identity. And comedy is a place where if somebody knows what they are and they poke fun at it, it should be funny. We should be able to say, yeah, that's funny about what we. Let me tell you about you, right? That's the whole basis of the dozens. Like, right, when you play in the dozens with somebody, you take your lumps, right? Because you know that yeah, right, yeah, okay, yeah, we poor, yeah, you got that one, yeah. And then you come back, it's like, we poor, but you ugly, and I can get money, right? So like, that's the society I grew up in. I grew up in being able to laugh at ourselves and laugh at other people, and have those people laugh with me. But we've moved so far away from that, and I want that back. You know, I want to laugh with my friends. I want to laugh at my friends. I'll tell you this right now. I grew up in a chapter. I came up in a fraternity chapter that it was dog eat dog, and Stan and Vaughn are on here, and they could tell you that if you had thin skin, you didn't survive in the Xi Alpha chapter, the money making Xi Alpha chapter of Phi Beta Sigma. You did not survive, and so that's the kind of life that I want to lead, that we can make fun of each other and then come together and be really, yeah, but I am poor. Answering Mike Coleman over here, really enjoy each other's company and laugh at our inadequacies and celebrate when we have triumphs. And that's the kind of life and that's the kind of country that I want to live in. And I hope that's the kind of country that you want to live in too. Today, later on at Baruch College is doing a virtual a virtual panel, discussion panel about being black in America, and I am one of their panelists. Hopefully, if you are not doing anything later on at 6 o'clock, please join in. It starts at 6:30 actually, and listen to what I have to say. A lot of it will sound familiar because it's kind of the same sentiment that I express here at the show. But also there will be other panelists on, and it'll be a really good dialogue. So check us out. I'll post it on my actual page. So if you're interested in joining, come on back. Come on back and hang out with me later on this evening. Other than that, have yourself a great weekend. It's gonna be rainy in New York City, and that's fine. We're gonna have a rainy day. We're gonna chill inside the house because that's what we've been doing the entire time. All right. So anyway, I will catch you guys later. This is Hayden, your host. This has been the Greenhouse Effect, and I will see you next week.